Canto uno splendido giardino, canto uno splendido giardino, canto uno splendido giardino, un usignolo sono io. Canto uno splendido giardino, canto uno splendido giardino, canto uno splendido giardino, un usignolo sono io. Canto uno splendido uccellino, canto uno...
NLP crossed my path just after I'd had a baby and had gone back and was looking for something really good to prove that I existed again. And it was true, it was good. It was with Jean Early. It was supposed to be the first course in France, maybe in Europe, though Annie Linden says the same thing. And as soon as I got in there, I sort of started understanding why, of all the methods that I found before, some worked and some didn't, which was interesting. You know, you got simple things like synchronization and you know, pacing and leading and all the communication information, and I went, oh, of course, that's a nice way of coding lots of stuff that we use in teaching. So yes, what I got was the communication, then you get the change bits from the actual. My big revelation, which did take me back to Jung and analysis, was when Jean would do a demonstration and I was the subject and I was out. As far as I was concerned, I didn't hear what he was saying to the group. He was doing his meta comments and he just said to me, don't worry, you know, just stay with it. And I did stay with it. And that for me was a big revelation from all the communication techniques where you're supposed to be in contact with people and in contact. And this was really deep contact with my own interior and my own information. That was absolute revelation. I hadn't had that since I did analysis, Jungian analysis. Obviously I was deeply in touch with my own stuff. So that was very interesting because it looked like it was quicker and there was a structure to it. You could say this was this had 6 points, do this, do that type thing. And of course the ease of the ABC triad work, that was, we were working in pairs mostly in my language and management training things, or in small groups, but I hadn't realized that actual triad, you know, and switching around so that you played all three roles was so effective.
You mean during the exercise?
Yeah, during any exercise, yes. Yeah. Just as a way of people, because we were always looking for ways for people to learn from each other and to do self-learning.
So it was not only the content, it was also the didactics.
Yeah, and it was the method. Because the biggest difference between teaching, which was obviously what most people were doing, even though it was management techniques, they were basically telling people what to do and getting them to do it. I have a client and it's perfectly clear to me they don't know the difference between behavior and identity, so I go back to logical levels. I do nice clean logical levels. I do them quicker, and I do them again in the Alcatel-Lucent program, which I've been in for 10 years, which is another, you have to do things very quickly. And again, I have like 2 hours suddenly to sum everything up. So I go, okay, so we'll align your energies and see if you're ready to do this, and we're going to use these 6 distinctions. Yeah, I think I could make a whole life history out of. I do them very differently, logical levels. From when we first did them, it used to take hours, and you walked all the way up them and all the way down them, and you know, it was big stuff.
So how do you do them now?
Well, it depends what's the time constraints, context constraints. But sometimes I just go immediately for. It seems to me you're making a big difference, and now I code it as right brain, left brain. And I say, right down here we have 3 things which we can talk about at this speed, and you can tell me where you've got to do something, you can tell me what you actually have to do, you can tell me all the capacities you have to do it, or things you have to learn. And this is very business orientated, and we get a nice map out. But I said, when we go over this line here, we're going into your unconscious to find out what's supporting you doing all that. And here we're going to really look for your deep motivation in your right brain. So we have to find out, so there must be a belief over there which is supporting you doing all this. And I do a very slow trance-like shift so that they realise we're going to other territory. I say, Mark, what is it? Could it possibly be that you really believe about you or the world or other people, that allows you to go out there and produce this energy to do all these things out there in the business world. Then they've usually tranced out, and then you usually they start getting it. I said, so you really believe this is useful, or you believe you can do it, or whatever. And I said, it has to be very short, because the right brain really doesn't like a long discord, only wants one simple little sentence. And when you say it, we'll see if it has an effect on you. So would you like to just say your belief? And they go, oh, yeah, I do believe I can do it. I said, that's fine, now you're talking to your right brain. So now let's stay in the same mode, and we go, if you believe that, then who are you? By that time, I've really got them. So and then
so
it's obvious.
at the same time sort of hypnotic and sort of conversational.
And conversational, I make a big...
And the spatial aspect is more in your gestures than in actually moving the person around.
I can do it. So if I've got the space and I've got the time, I move them. But I can do it just sitting down for the first one to convince them that this is worth doing by the change in the voice and the change in the speech. And when, of course, it gets to after you've got an identity, they might shift back and talk business. I said, okay, so we've gone back in the left brain and you're telling me your role. So that's fine, but there's another part of it. And there's something really in you, you can imagine it. Then I said, so that's great. So now we've got you there. But what's the point of doing this, frankly? If we have more people in the world doing, who's gonna get any benefits from this? I mean, really, honestly. And then they go, and I said, now you've moved into to the last level, and if this is not, you can't see that this is good for you, good for others, and good for the world, we might as well not do it. And that's really nice. It's really nice because obviously the energy, as we discovered with Robert long ago, the energy you get from that, then if you keep that energy and say, okay, so now just let's look, I say look from there usually, and you look back and see, is there anything that you now know about this? And that's really nice, because the left brain, right brain distinction, they find it easier to take right brain and the left brain. And this that you're doing here, which is so important, and you're investing so much structuring energy into, will only make sense if you've got the support. So probably the original idea will come from somewhere up here, that you wanted to be an engineer and you wanted to do this, but then when you're doing a project, you get so busy down here with the content, you forget that you're being supported by a large part of you. And when you've re-evoked it, you will have the energy to go the extra mile with the project, and you will be concerned about whether it works or not. If you're only trying to do it off the energy of the content and the logic, you'll probably get burnout. And they all look at me and say, yes, that's right.
They recognize that.
They do recognize it, yes.
Yes, because I remember... that David Grove was here a number of times here in La Bouffière.
Yes,
right?
we were lucky because 2 years before his death, he was experimenting all his stuff with a small group of us here. And that's where we...
was it only 2 years before his death?
Yeah.
He was here more often?
Oh, he was here before. He was here before as well. But then we were doing... we were doing other things. But there wasn't this feeling of the small group. We had people coming from England. We had... we still learned a lot, but it wasn't David experimenting. The last 2 years, David would come and say, well, I've got this thing, and we would all be out there in the garden trying it on and trying it off. And the general feeling that the future was in the experimentation was what I got from David. The future wasn't in tidying it all up and having something very neat and clean to give to other people. It was the spirit of innovation, the spirit of experimentation.
Nice. Yeah, I remember and then coming back, there was this sort of strange apparatus in the garden where you could take different
the gyroscope.
The
gyroscope was absolutely superb. The gyroscope was superb, but I got very worried about insurance because it was pretty old, and if anybody fell out of it, it would have been a disaster. So it's gone back to England, to Liverpool. There are two in England. There's another guy called Steve Saunders who actually thinks he's the inheritor of all of David's knowledge, and so I listened to him with great interest. But as far as I'm concerned, he's very, very, very interesting. But he's not. Nobody is the inheritor of David. We aren't teaching David. We're all being little Davids all over the place, or big Davids. Or we're just doing our thing. But then we do discuss a lot and say, well, so why do we call this clean?
Right.
And,
well, let's get back to that for a moment, Jennifer. So You say there's 3 basic elements to the David Grove's work.
Yes.
One is clean language, one is clean space, and one is emergent knowledge.
Yeah.
Now, let's start with number 1. So, what is clean language?
Well, clean language is definitely linguistic. And the idea that you pose a question which has the minimum interference with the client, so that you are following what they've said, and the next direction is only going to be there. We have like 9 directions only. I still use the original model, which is called the compass, because I think that's it. The question, what kind of, or where, or what happened before, what happened after, what would you like to have happen, where could that come from, and all that is like what? These are very, very simple questions. And in David's experience, when he asked those type of questions, the person would use metaphor. So it's a very linguistic model. You can feel that you have to be careful how you pose the question. You listen very carefully to the words of the other person, and then the person will drop down between the gaps and stop moving across horizontally, and you get depth, which went very nicely with my old Jungian past, except I thought it was much quicker. Much quicker, because the questions were...
Yeah, so the idea is, if you ask these clean questions long enough, eventually the client will
pretty quick,
often,
and not even eventually, pretty immediately, because you're not stimulating them with any intellectual questions that they have to work out what you mean by it, and you're just doing these simple. No, they drop into metaphor, and you poke them with that.
And
I use drawings a lot, by the way.
What is this part about emergent knowledge?
Oh, emergent. Now, let's go in sequence those. Then David got a lot of success with this model, especially with the inner child. He was a great worker with the inner child. He was also a Maori, so he was going to rescue the inner child and the ancestors and linking them up, and all of this through metaphor and these simple questions. Then he said, "I'm stopping that." And the Americans whom he was working with at the time were absolutely horrified. They said, "But this is it. This is the method. It's about the inner child and releasing it from the past." And he said, "No, I'm doing something else now. Space is my teacher." So he launched himself into space with, paragliding, and he was no good at it. Landed up in trees in New Zealand, the police coming to get him out. But when he changed, he really changed. So he changed completely, and he said, "No, this is not a linguistic model. It's about space. Space has the information. So instead of going profoundly, we'll go horizontally, and we ask you, okay," he said, "write any objective, I don't care what you write. Where are you going to put it? Put it over there, put yourself here, then are you at the right distance, the right angle, the right height?" So you're telling the client, get yourself spatially organized in relation to what you are trying to do. Then you look for another space, and you say, well, find another space which knows something about this. Then you ask them what's the name of the space, and then they'll get a razor. Now we save 6 spaces. At the beginning, people having too many spaces, and it was too much, because there's no reason why it should stop, actually. So we think in terms of 6 spaces. And then his theory, coming from small worlds and networks, was that the information was in those 6 spaces, and what you had to do was allow your brain to reconnect them, and you would come up with new information. So this was not a linguistic model, so he said no metaphors, no asking long questions.
And so how did he have something about why it is all in space, a theory?
But his reading was all about small worlds and networks. And then from there he was interested in the idea of you're only 6 steps away from where you want to, the person you want to meet or the thing you want to do.
That proved wrong.
Well, it could prove wrong. We didn't really mind whether it proved wrong or not. What we were trying to do was say, if we take our hypothesis, we never said it was true. And we were, frankly, the 6 got us out of the mess of having people all over this garden with like 25 spaces and getting completely involved in their inner world and having no way out, because we were saying that we weren't going to structure them. We were just going to keep saying, is there anything else? And if there is, they would go on and on and on. So we could have chosen 7, in my opinion. It doesn't really matter, and sometimes people do have 7 spaces. But the idea of us saying we'll take a number and we'll use that, and we'll take as a hypothesis that perhaps you're only 6 steps or 7 steps away from your ability to reorganize this information. I think that's pretty good. If you have 25 steps to reorganize, it's more difficult. I suppose anybody would be subgrouping them into smaller groups. Like Graham's. If you keep removing the interference of the facilitator, how far can you go? So first we had a lot of stuff where you'd have lots and lots of paper, and you would keep saying to the person, so is there anything else that should go on that piece of paper? They wrote up their objection. He said, is there anything else that should go there? Wait, and they step back. Can you look at it from another angle? Is there anything else that should go on there? Is there anything else? In other words, you take one question only, like, is there anything else? And as he called, drive it. So you drive it. Then we started saying, well, let's only drive it 6 times. And then stop. And then say, so what do you know now? Well, that proved to be extraordinarily fruitful. Extraordinarily fruitful, because the person, again, had all that wonderful invitation to be deeply in contact with their own stuff, the minimum amount of worry about what you thought about it. At the same time, they had to feel supported, and that's where, personally, I feel it's very difficult to teach somebody how to get to here if they haven't gone through more conventional trainings where they learn what rapport is, how to be in it, how to be... Once you know that, you can get rapport from a distance. David got rapport just by walking in, sitting down, and being who he was. And people would produce all this material, but an unskilled coach who thinks they can do it by just asking 6 questions, is there anything else, I think is pushing it. Though I have colleagues in Clean who don't say that. Philip Holland thinks that you can pretty well. But even then, he has an intention. I mean, you have an intention to be of help to this person. I think there's a lot more that each time I add something in, it really is embrace and include. So NLP has been an incredible base, and I still have clients that I send them off to do an NLP training. I say, before you come and do Clean with me, please go and do NLP, because it's so much quicker.
Canto uno splendido giardino, canto uno splendido giardino, canto uno splendido giardino, un usignolo sono io. Canto uno splendido giardino, canto uno splendido giardino, canto uno splendido giardino, un usignolo sono io.